Hello everybody and welcome to today's session all about acing your next job interview, and I'm really looking forward to taking you through some ideas to help you enjoy interviews. That's what we're aiming for. So if you are joining me live, hello, you're very welcome to be here with me. Do let me know as you join how you feel about interviews. So do you love them? Do you hate them? Do you feel just okay about them? So just, say hello and just let me know. Do you love interviews? Do you hate interviews? How do you feel about them? I'm just going to get my comments bit sorted out while people are joining. I'm just going to give everybody a few minutes to just get on and find the live, and then we will start the session. So do say hello if you're joining me, and do let me know, do you love interviews? Do you hate them? Do you just feel okay about them? Or if you've got an interview coming up, let me know, because it might be that you want some specific help today about interviews. So I'm just going to give it a few more moments for people to join us, and then I will dive into today's session, because I love interview coaching, because there's some really great simple things that you can do to really enhance your performance. Hello Michaela, you don't mind interviews except when you get to the bit where they say tell me about a time and your mind goes blank. Okay, well I'm definitely going to give you some tips around that, Michaela, so stay tuned. Thank you for letting me know how you feel about them. When I do run some interview training, there is occasionally somebody in the group who actually loves interviews, so those people do exist. They are in the minority though, because most people dread them. But what I want to do today is get you to the point where you can actually feel positive about going for your next interview, because that is part of the battle. Great, some more comments coming through. Christina, hello. Do employers expect you to weave your answers into a story during an interview? Okay, we'll definitely kind of cover that as well. And Katie, hi Katie, I used to hate the question, tell me about yourself. Yes, lots of people hate that one too. So don't worry, we're going to cover some of that today as well. So thank you guys for saying hello, letting me know how you feel about them. If you're just joining, I'm just asking you to let me know how you feel about interviews, and obviously if you've got questions throughout, just pop them into the chat and I either answer them as we're going along, or I'll come back and answer them at the end. And do stay until the end, because I do have a special offer for you as well, which I'm very excited about. So hang on till the end to find out a bit more about that as well. And we'll be around 30 to 40 minutes, depending on how many questions we get today. So, so by the end of the session, I really want you to be feeling more confident about your interviews, and to get some techniques around how you might approach your next interview in a different frame of mind. Hi Rebecca. Okay, great. So let me tell you a little bit about me if you don't know me, if you haven't been on one of my lives before. I'm Sarah Archer. I'm a career and a confidence and a leadership coach, and I'm passionate about helping women have careers that really work for them. That means they don't suffer burnout, and they can do those careers authentically. They don't feel like they're selling out, and they can make it work for them whatever stage of life they're at. So that's my passion. And just a bit of background in terms of interviews. I've got lots of recruitment experience. So before I was a career coach, I was in HR, so I've recruited, I've interviewed from the most junior position in the organisation up to chief executive. I've interviewed in the corporate sector, I've interviewed for the civil service, I've interviewed in the voluntary sector. And I have to say, I've been that person who has designed those interview questions, those competency interview questions. I've designed those situational tests and tasks that you've had to do, and I've designed the presentations that you've had to make. So I can really give you that kind of insider piece around what's going through the mind of a recruiter, which can also help you in terms of positioning yourself for the interview. And like I said, I love interview coaching because there's lots of things you can do that are really quite simple but can really make a difference to your interview performance. And I'm really grateful for Katie offering me the chance to talk to you about this. I am the FWP Expert Career Coach, and this is my 4th live covering a variety of different career topics. And yeah, I'm really going to enjoy talking to you today about interviews. And I could probably, like you said, Michaela, I could talk about it for hours. So I'm going to try and keep it fairly contained. So take a moment and just imagine what it would be like to really feel positive and confident about going for an interview and knowing that you're going to perform well whatever interview you are going for, whatever job you're going for. That's where we want to get you to. Because your mindset is as important, your mindset is as important as the kind of practical stuff, and we're going to be covering that as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to get inside the head of the interviewer to help you think about interviews slightly differently and understand what's going on. We're going to look at the different types of interview, the different types of interview questions you might be faced with, and what you need to do to prepare yourself and sell yourself at interviews. So we've got quite a lot to cover, so I'm going to dive into it straight away, and like I said, but stop me if you've got questions. I'm really happy to answer questions as we're going along. So why do people find interviews hard? I mean, they are a bit of an unnatural situation, aren't they? You're faced with strangers that you don't know in a situation where you've got to talk about yourself for maybe 45 minutes to an hour. And, you know, often we're not used to talking about ourselves in that way in terms of promoting what we do and how we do it. So it can feel really unnatural, and it can feel like you've got this big spotlight on you that can make all sorts of things happen. So let me know if any of these things resonate with you. But what can go wrong in an interview? So these are the things I've seen over the years that just mean that people don't really do themselves justice in the interview. And often it's to do with our nerves and what's going on for us in the interview. So sometimes it can be waffling, so you can find that you can talk and talk and talk, but you're losing the interviewers. They can't concentrate what you're saying because you're giving them too much information, and you're going off down rabbit holes that aren't really answering their question properly, and they're just overwhelmed with information that you're giving them. Or you can talk too little. You can actually kind of clam up and not really give them enough to be able to make a decision about whether you're the right person for the job. Or you can be pitching your answers at the wrong level. And this is particularly where you're going maybe from an operational role to a leadership role, and you're talking too much about the doing and not enough about the strategy. Or if you're going for the next level role, you're not really inhabiting that next level role, and you're pitching your answers at kind of too junior a level. Or the classic not using I, you're talking about we all the time, so interviewers can't make assumptions about what you've done, they can only go on what you've told them. You don't tell them what your role was within that, they can't understand the impact that you're having. Or you might find you go blank in an interview, you just think, oh God, I can't think of anything to say, I've just forgotten everything I've prepared. Or you're halfway through a sentence and you kind of forget what you were trying to say. Or you just, you're just not answering the question that they've asked you, you're giving them a different kind of answer that might be prepared for something else. Or the physical responses that you get in an interview when those nerves are coursing around your body. You might be shaking, you might be going red, you might be just having some other kind of physical response to nerves that just mean that you then start to feel not confident because you know that your nerves are apparent to the interview panel. Or you find you're just not building rapport with the panel. So let me know if any of those things resonate with you when you've been in an interview. Have you experienced any of those things? Because the difficulty is, if you've had a bad or a poor interview experience, it can really colour how you then feel about interviews going forward. And you might or might not know this fact about the brain, but the brain has to have 4 positives to balance 1 negative. So if you've had 1 bad negative experiences in an interview, you've got to then think of 4 great experiences to kind of balance that out, and the brain will always tend to go to the negative one. So what we're going to do today is help you make sure that your next interview experience is a more positive one. So do let me know if any of those things resonated with you. I have a little formula for interview success, which I'm going to share with you, which is preparation plus practice equals performance. I do like a bit of alliteration. So preparation plus practice equals performance. Okay, and I'm going to take you through some of those things today in terms of preparation and practice. But let's just get into the head of the interviewer and think about what are they thinking about, what's important for them when they're thinking about an interview. So the first thing is they're thinking is, can you do the job? Okay, so that's about, do you have the experience, the skills, the knowledge, the competences to actually do this job? So that's their primary concern. But they're also thinking about, will you do the job? So that's about, are you motivated and engaged and enthusiastic about this particular role? And then the third thing is, will you fit in? So are you going to be able to kind of fit into the team? Are you going to fit into the culture of the organisation? Now, when we're thinking about preparing for an interview, we tend to focus on the can you do the job? Can I do the job? But you've also got to factor in, you've got to also demonstrate the enthusiasm, the motivation, the engagement, and the cultural fit as well in your preparation. And sometimes when we're nervous, that kind of can compress our enthusiasm and our engagement because we're so busy focused on trying to just give the answer, we forget to show that engagement level. So I'm going to give you a little tip that can really help you with that. But what's important to remember about the interview panel or the interviewer is they do want you to do well. They want you to be successful at your interview, because sometimes you think they're just going to trip me up, they're going to ask me lots of difficult questions, there's going to be a good cop, bad cop going on. But actually they're giving up a lot of time to interview candidates. They want you to do well. They want to be able to appoint a candidate at the end of the day. So hold that in your head, that they do want you to do well. So then we've got the types of interview that you might face. So we've got an informal approach. So that might be, let's meet for a coffee. I want to talk to you about this job opening. Now that might seem, okay, that's quite nice, it's quite informal, but actually it's still an interview and you still need to prepare. And sometimes you need to be thinking a little bit harder about how you're going to get across what you need to get across, because there's less structure in an informal interview. It's less obvious what they're asking you about, so you really have to be thinking, what do I need to let them know before I leave that coffee chat? So that's the informal type. And then the other types are kind of structured, formal, more kind of panel type interviews, where the interviewers are going to have set questions they're going to ask to every candidate on the whole, and those questions are going to be mapped against the person specification and the job description. So they're fairly easy to predict the kind of questions you're going to be asked. So when you're doing your prep, it's going to be easier to think about, what are they going to ask me? And then obviously you have to think about tests and presentations, because they could be setting psychometric tests, personality tests, behavioural or situational tests, and they could also be asking you to make a presentation, either to test your presentation skills or on a particular aspect of the person specification. So there's a lot involved in interviews, isn't there? And what we're seeing now is that actually they're taking maybe more than 1 or 2 rounds of interviewing before they get to decision. I was working with a client last year who actually, she ended up having 8 interviews before she got the job offer for that particular job. She really, really wanted it, which is why she stuck the course, but it required a huge amount of energy and prep to get through 8 interviews to actually then get the job. So you do want to make sure this is the job that you really want if you know you're going to have to face going through that number of interviews. So if you've had that experience, do let me know. Just going to check the so Rebecca's saying, I had an interview and 2.5 hours later I got an email saying I didn't get the job. Yeah, and that's really tough, isn't it, when you don't get the job, and coping with that kind of rejection is really hard. And I've written a blog about coping with rejection, which I'll link in the comments later, which might help if you haven't got the last job that you went for, or a few jobs that you've been interviewed for. Okay, so then the types of questions that you might get to prepare for are the classic interview questions. So that's the, tell me about yourself, why do you want the job, why do you want to work for us, What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Those are the kind of classic interview questions that you're likely to come across in an interview. Then we've got competency-based questions, which are the ones where they're going to ask you to give them an example of that particular skill or competency. And then we've got strengths-based questions, which are gaining popularity, and certainly if you're going for any civil service jobs, they will ask you strengths-based questions, where they want to gauge whether it's a natural strength for you. They want to know that you can do it to a high level of capability, that you have an energy for it, and that you use that strength regularly. And they don't really want you to prepare for that. We'll come on to that later. They want it to be an in-the-moment response. So those are the types of questions that you might face in an interview when you're thinking about preparing. So let's look at what you can do to actually prepare. Because remember, my formula is preparation plus practice equals performance. So when I'm working with clients in interview coaching, we're working in a bespoke way to the particular job that they're applying for and really fine-tuning their answers. So obviously I can't do that in this session. I'm going to be talking kind of generically how you can prepare for your interview. So the preparation, I'd say, falls into two areas. So we've got the practical and we've got the kind of mindset and confidence preparation. So often when I say to clients, tell me about your preparation process, they'll be like, well, I do lots of research. I research the company, I look at the job and really make sure I understand it. And all of that is really great. So really researching the organisation, knowing what they're trying to achieve, what their values are, what their mission is, all of that is really important. Really getting into the job and really understanding what's required of you is also really important. The extra bit of research you can think about doing is on the panel. So the people who are going to be interviewing you, you can think about what would be important to each of those people. Okay, so obviously the interview panel can tend to be made up of definitely the hiring manager, so the person you're going to be working for, and what they will be looking for is actually, can you come in and do this job, do it really well, really add value to the team and make my life as a manager easier? So they're going to be really interested in how you do the job. Then we might have on the panel an HR person. So often there'll be a member of HR on the interview panel, and they'll be more interested in the kind of cultural and team fit. How you're going to fit in and add value in the organisation, how you're going to fit with the team. And then you might have a peer or a stakeholder on the panel as well. So it might be that you're applying for a role where you have to interact with other people in the organisation, and they will be looking for how you're going to add value to what they do, how you're going to interact with them and their team, and what a difference you can make to them. And then if you get to second interview, or it could be further down, you're going to meet your manager's manager, and they'll be interested in kind of that organisational fit and what added value you can bring to the organisation. So it's really worth just spending a bit of time thinking about the panel. You can research them on LinkedIn, you can look at kind of any synergies you might have with their career history. It just helps them also feel a bit more human, and it feels like you know them when you either walk in the room if you're having a face-to-face interview, or when you see them online in a Teams or a Zoom interview. So as I'm kind of going through the prep, what I'd encourage you to think about is, am I doing this already? What could I add to what I already do to help me make my interview performance better next time? So then obviously the next thing you need to prep for is you need to be thinking about the interview questions and preparing your answers. So not preparing them that you're going to learn them by heart, but you do want to do more than just kind of thinking about how you might respond to them. And I encourage my clients to actually write down kind of bullet points, or even write it out, what their answer would be to the specific questions. So obviously you've got your classic questions, which is the tell me about yourself, why do you want the job, those kind of questions. And you want to keep it, or CV walkthrough, you want to keep it quite contained. That's an icebreaker question. They don't want a 20-minute walking them through your CV post by post. They want a kind of overview. And so you're going to be thinking about, what are the kind of key things that I could tell them about me that are relevant to this role? So So you want to keep that contained, but you want to definitely prepare for it, and you want to be bringing in enthusiasm for the role and how you can add value. Then we've got the competency-based questions, and if you're not familiar with the STAR technique, you need to get familiar with it. Now, I'm not going to do an in-depth session on how to use the STAR technique, because there's lots of stuff out there about STAR. There's lots of YouTube videos you can watch about STAR technique, and obviously when I work with my clients on them, we're really refining their competency responses to really show value. But the STAR technique gives you a really great structure to hang your answers on: situation, task, action, result. Okay, interviewers love it because that's what they're looking for, and you're handing them this gorgeous present of this well-rounded answer that they don't have to probe hugely. They will probe it a bit, but you're giving them exactly what they need for that particular competency. And the great thing about the person spec, you can see from the person spec what are the skills and competences they're recruiting against. I can predict they're going to ask me a question which will be something like, give me an example of when you've influenced an outcome to a particular project or whatever it might be. So you can usually predict what they're going to ask you. And the internet is brilliant. You can Google interview questions for a, press officer, for example, and you'll get, common interview questions coming up. So again, you can think about, in relation to the job you're going for, what might they ask me, and do some prep around those answers, because the more prepared you are, the more likely you are to give a great answer. Very few people can wing it in an interview and come up with a really great answer, because you'll just think of what I said at the top of your mind, not the best example that you want to give. Okay, you can even use ChatGTP. You can go into ChatGTP, you can give them the job description, so you can upload the job description and say, what are the kind of interview questions I might be asked for this job? Brilliant. Now, I can't guarantee that they will be the right interview questions that you're going to get, but it's going to help you think about what could they ask me. So, for example, I was working with a client actually on Friday for a civil service interview, and he had prepared some answers to competency questions that he might be asked, and they were just too long. He'd got too much information in there. He was trying to kind of cover off all the bases, and he would have just lost the interview panel. So we really, really refined it down to give a really punchy but informative answer that created impact. So when you've kind of prepared your answers, you want to be checking, are they really showing how I have added value, and making sure, if it's been a team effort, that you've really talked about everyone knows people work in teams, but within that team you will have had a specific role, and you need to be telling the interview panel what that was. And obviously the other sort of prep you need to do in terms of questions is thinking about questions you want to ask them. It is a part of the interview. If you at the end of the interview go, actually I don't have any questions, you've answered all of them already, the interview panel are going to be a bit deflated. They've just spent time asking you questions. They want to know that you're interested and engaged. So you want to have 2, 3 questions you want to ask them. You might only get time for 2, but you want to have some really good questions to ask them, and that's part of your preparation too. So let me know if you've got any questions so far about the preparation on your questions. I know it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but hopefully it's got you thinking about how you could do more prep around the actual questions you're going to be asked. We're going to move on to now thinking about how do you prepare in terms of mindset. Because the mindset you're going into the interview with is as important as the prep you do around your competences. Because if you go into that interview thinking, I'm really dreading it, I really hope I wake up in the morning and I've got a sore throat and I have to cancel because I really don't want to go to that interview or have that interview, that will seep out unconsciously. Remember, they're judging you about, do you want to really work there? Do you really want to do this job? So you've got to flip that mindset and think positively about the interview, which can feel quite challenging because it is this unnatural situation which we talked about earlier. So there's a couple of things you could do to think about this. So you could think about, okay, what sparks joy about this job? Now, Joy isn't necessarily something you would think about in relation to an interview, but if you can think about what is it about this job that I'm really looking forward to, that I'm really engaged with, that I really, really want, then it can help you connect with why you've got to go for this interview. Okay, so thinking about what sparks joy. Right, Michaela's just said, I recently interviewed for a new role and there was no job description. How would you have prepared a candidate for this? Right, well that's an interesting one. Okay, okay, so we're going to come back to the mindset. I'm just going to answer Michaela's question. So I'm assuming, Michaela, did you message them and say, have you got a job description? So obviously you can ask them for a job description to help you prepare. If you haven't, they just don't have one, that's a little bit strange. So you could ask them what are the key competencies or skills you're going to be assessing me against at the interview. If you don't get any joy with that, you're going to have to go with what was in the advert. So the advert will give you information about some of the things they're going to be asking you about. If not, then if it's a fairly common job, I would look online for a job description that might be similar, so similar job, similar organisation, and try and take from that what I can. But I would be asking, why don't they have a job description? Because that's quite unusual today, really. Hope that's helped, Michaela. Okay, flipping back to mindset then. Again, you want to be reframing the interview and think about it's a two-way conversation. It's not an interrogation, and I'm looking forward to going and talking to them, finding out information about the organisation and meeting new people. So you can just try and reframe it a bit. And you can use affirmations to help with this. So I had a client who, she had had a really, really bad experience at interview previously, a bad experience with her previous boss as well, and she was going for quite a high level role in a tech firm, and she was feeling really negative about herself, what she could offer. Her confidence was really low, and so we worked on some affirmations. She had about 3 days between the coaching and the interview, and so I told her just to repeat these affirmations over and over to herself as much as possible between then and the interview. She was a bit sceptical because she just thought affirmations, a bit woo-woo, and by affirmation I just mean a positive statement about yourself in relation to the interview. So it could be something simple like, I am really great at what I do, I've got a lot to offer, obviously the more specific you can be the better, and I'm going to really ace this interview. It just helps your brain to kick into that feeling more positive. She was really sceptical, but she did it anyway because she wanted to try anything she could. She did actually go then into that job interview, and she did actually get the job. Now, I can't say it was all down to the affirmation, but it definitely helped lift her out of that feeling not confident, dreading the interview, to actually going into it in a more positive frame of mind. So if that's something you struggle with, then I would really think about how you can reframe that interview and maybe think about using affirmations to help you. Okay, just going back to Michaela's question. Yes, I did ask for a job, but it wasn't available because it was a role which they were moulding for a new phase in the business. Okay. My take on that would be they shouldn't be interviewing for it if they haven't really worked out what it is, because they might change that. Anyway, I don't know how you got on with that, Michaela. Be interested to know. Then you've just got to get your head in terms of mindset about the whole selling yourself piece, because often clients will say to me, I really hate that whole thought of selling myself in an interview. And I would just reposition that as, don't think about it as selling yourself. Think about it as going into detail about how you're going to be an asset to that company. So giving the information that the panel need in order to see that you will be a real asset, that you will add value, and you are giving them information about that. Because if you think about selling, you might feel that that's not authentic, that you can't be yourself, and you want to be yourself in an interview. So try and reposition it as not selling yourself, not having to do the self-promotion piece, but just being authentic in terms of telling them, intentionally about all the great things that you have done that will help them know that you're going to be a really great asset in the organisation. Let me just have a quick sip because my voice is going. Okay, so that's the preparation. Let me know if you've got any questions on the preparation piece, because I know that's been quite whistle-stop through it. And we're going to think about now the practice piece, because this is what tends to sometimes not happen, in that people do the preparation, but they do it in terms of thinking about it or even just writing it down. And actually what I mean by practice is actually saying it out loud. So this is not to learn it. You don't want to go into that interview kind of parroting your answers, but just by actually articulating what you're going to say if you get a question on this particular competency. It'll help you refine your answers, but also it will really help you then be able to recall it more coherently in the actual interview when you're asked a question on that particular competency. So what happens is when you are actually saying something out loud, you're creating a neural pathway in your brain, and the more you say it, the more you repeat it, the stronger that pathway is established in your brain. And then when you're asked the question, you're more likely to give that particular answer. You're less likely to go blank, and it just really helps you to feel confident about, I know what I'm going to say, I've got a great answer. Now, I would say with these answers that you're preparing, they have to flex, because you can't guarantee you're going to get that question that you've prepared for. But you just want to have a great question for that great answer for that competency, that you know you can emphasise different parts of it depending on how they structure their question. Okay, so practice in the mirror. You can record yourself if you want to. You record on your phone or on your laptop, play it back. Say it to family or friends, ask for feedback if that's going to be helpful to you, but just make time to practice it. And also think about, when you're practicing it, your delivery and how you can show engagement, because remember that enthusiasm is a really important part of the delivery. And particularly when you're having an online interview, because you're going to have to work harder at getting that across because you're not face to face in the room with them. One simple thing you can do, which can really enhance how you come across, is to smile in your interview. Now, obviously when you're nervous, smiling tends to be the last thing you'll be thinking about, but when you're practicing, what you can do is you can actually practice smiling and talking at the same time. And you can probably see that I am doing it right now, that I am smiling at you and talking at the same time, and how much more engaging that is than if I'm just talking to you without actually smiling. Now, obviously you don't want to kind of smile like a loon throughout the kind of whole interview, but you do want to be bringing that kind of smiling into your interview to show engagement, particularly at the beginning when you're establishing rapport with the interview panel. Now, people often say to me, I'm talking with my hands, should I do that? You probably can see that I use my hands to talk. I would say you've got to be yourself, so body language is important. If that's your way of kind of communicating engagement, then go for it, I would say. Leaning forward shows engagement as well. So just thinking about how you can use your body language to bring kind of more energy into the interview. And then if you're really nervous at interviews, which, let's face it, most of us are, then thinking about your breathing technique is going to be really, really helpful. So there is a great technique called square breathing, which you can Google, or box breathing it's sometimes called, which you can do before you're going into the interview. And just doing that deep breathing can help calm those nerves down, and can also reduce the anxiety that you're feeling. You can feel those kind of butterflies in your stomach just getting lesser by just doing your deep breathing, because you're just calming your nervous system down. So that's something you can also practice before the interview. So how are you feeling about the interviews right now? Let me know, and let me know if you've got some questions for me. I'm just going to go back over and see what the other questions were earlier on that I didn't cover. But just remember, we're talking about preparation plus practice equals performance. So hopefully I've given you some food for thought around how you can increase your preparation, and also what you can do to practice to make sure that you're going to be delivering a much more confident interview performance next time. Okay, let's just look at the questions. Pop any more questions into the chat. So, okay. So the tell me about a time my mind goes blank, that was your question, Michaela, wasn't it? So yeah, so that is the preparation piece. So tell me about a time is a competency question. They want an example from you about that particular competency. So if you've prepared against the person's specification, where they've given you one, obviously, then you will hopefully, Michaela, not go blank, because you're going to know, okay, I've got a good example I can use to talk about that particular skill. People often say, can I take notes into my interview? Yes, you can. Obviously, if you're online, you can have notes in front of you. So you could have some bullet points. Don't take copious notes in, because you're not going to be able to flick through. You just want bullet points. So say it's a competency on influencing or communication, negotiation. You're just going to have a bullet point or two that's going to remind you about the competency example you've prepared, and it'll just nudge you if you're feeling, oh God, what did I prepare on that, I've gone blank. It just helps you feel, okay, I've got a strategy if something's going to happen. Usually knowing that the notes are there means you don't have to look at them, because you just know that you've got that safety blanket. It can really help you. So Christina, your question was, do employers expect you to weave your answers into a story during an interview? Well, the story thing is, when you're giving them an example of something you've done, you are telling them a story. So it is going to have an end, a beginning, a middle and an end. And the STAR technique really helps you construct that story. But you don't want that story to go off track. You've got to keep it really focused on the competency. And similarly, when you're answering the question, tell me about yourself, again, you're telling them a bit of a story. You're not going to go from, well, when I left uni I did this. You're going to tell them a story about what you're bringing to them that's going to be really helpful to them. Let me know if that's helpful. Katie's question was, I used to hate the question, tell me about yourself. Yes, everybody does. And that's why really thinking about those maybe 5 key things about you that you want to share with them, and having a little narrative about that helps you with that opening question. Because remember, it's an icebreaker. They think you know everything about yourself. It's going to be really easy for you to tell us about yourself, but it's a bit of a nightmare for candidates, because you think, where do I start? Where do I stop? So just thinking about four or 5 key things that in relation to that job that you can share with them can be really helpful. So Michaela, I can talk about myself for hours, but not necessarily what they want to hear. Yeah, so doing that prep will really help you think through, what do they need to know about me to say yes? It's a two-way thing. You've got to give them what they need to know for them to go, yes, Michaela has everything that we're listing in our job spec, and she's shown she can add value. She's the perfect candidate. Okay, any other questions? Okay, sorry. Christina, do you have examples of the kind of questions we can ask the interviewer? Yeah, great question. So obviously depending on the job, but you could ask the ones that are quite good, which are, okay, what are the expectations for this role for the first 6 months? Or how would you judge success in the role for the first 6 months? Because that's going to give you useful information about what they want from you in that kind of initial period in the role. You might want to ask them about what are the goals for this team for the year? What are you trying to achieve? Which shows kind of an interest in the team. Or it might be something that you feel you specifically want to know about the organisation or the particular team. So thinking about what you really need to know, but that also shows engagement with what they're trying to do and shows interest in the job. A really great one to show rapport with the panel can be ask them, what do they enjoy about working for this organisation? So you're asking them something personal, which is building rapport, and also it gives you information about what kind of organisation this is. Because remember, an interview is about you finding out, do I want to say yes when they offer me the job? Because it's not necessarily going to be the right organisation or the right job for you. So you have to be able to find that out at the interview. And I, have said to clients before, when they make the offer, you don't have to say yes straight away. If there's extra things you need to know before you know you can say yes to it, you can ask to come back in and have another chat with them. You can ask for a tour of the building, particularly if it's been online interviews. You can ask to meet the team. Just think about what do you need to know before you can say yes. So hopefully that's been helpful, Christina. Oh, sorry, Charity. That was your question, not Christina's. Sorry, can't read. Okay, so I've got a special offer for you, which I mentioned. So I am offering up 5 power hours just to people in the Flexible Working Facebook group. And I don't do these power hours very often because I often work with clients over a long-term basis. But you can use these power hours to do kind of a mini interview session if you've got a particular interview area that you want to work on, or you can use them for a particular career decision or a particular kind of career issue that you're wrestling with at the moment. They are super effective. We can achieve a huge amount in 1 hour, and normally they would be £200, but for flexible working people members, until the end of April, they are £175. So if you book it before the end of April, you don't have to take it in April, you can take it in May, you can get it for £175. So if you feel, actually, I would really benefit from having some coaching around a specific thing that I'm struggling with at the moment, or on a particular area of the interview process that you've been struggling with, then please do book in. I'm going to pop the link into the comments now, so you can book in. Remember, there's only, sorry, I'm just trying to do that at the same time. There are only 5 spots, so that has popped in there now. There's only 5 spots, so don't delay. Do think about booking in. And if you've got any more questions, I'm going to stay on for a couple more minutes, so let me know if there's something else you'd like me to answer. It's been great being here with you live. If you're watching on replay, do, as I said, tag me in if you've got a question. I'll come back and answer the questions for you. And also, if you're interested in having a power hour, please do book in as soon as you can. There are only 5 available, so don't miss the opportunity to get some laser focused coaching to help you with either an interview issue or a career issue. So I'm going to stay on for a few more minutes. Let me know if you've got any more questions. I think I did answer the ones that popped up. And if you go for an interview and your next interview you ace it, let me know. I always love to hear from people who have then kind of taken on board some of these ideas and really helped them make a difference. So yeah, do let me know if you have your next interview and you ace it, you get that job offer, which essentially is what it's all about. So yeah, let me know if you've got any more questions. Thank you very much for joining me if you've been here with me live. It's been great to be here, and I look forward to hearing your comments about interview success. And I'm also going to pop in the link, once I've ended the live, the link to the blog about coping with not getting the job, because there might be times you don't get the job, and it's important to be able to kind of be resilient. So I've got some tips in there for you as well, which I'm going to put that link in later. Okay, well, I don't think we've got any more questions coming through, so thank you very much for joining me. Thank you, Katie, for hosting, and I look forward to seeing you all in the chat, or seeing you if you book in for a power hour. Have a great rest of the week, and I will see you all soon, hopefully.